Disclaimer: anytime I say any form of contextual analyzation or text analyzation, I mean textual analysis. That's one of the things with dyslexia. Sometimes I just get lots of variations of stuff that's not even what you're trying to say. Hey, Zach. So I'm here to summarize what I have read and watched. So I started by doing the study course skills guide, or like the little intro to study skills. I thought it was pretty cool. I like Tom. He's got a lot of really nice energy. Um, I then watched his video on strong habits. I really enjoyed the if-then logic. I think of myself as a very logical person um, in some aspects. And I really like the if then logic. I'm going to try to utilize the if then logic in my life to make myself be able to start new habits quicker and more effectively, and tie my habits to uh, old habits so that the new habits are a little bit easier to do, and I have opportunities to kind of just present it to myself to be able to take action and do them. Like Tom's suggestion of putting your phone alarm clock under a coffee table. So when you get down on the ground and shut it off, you're already on the ground, you just bust out a couple push ups. I thought that was really interesting logic and kind of like working with your brain to give it a break. Because the brains do a lot, and we do a lot, and we want to do so much more. And finding the time to create a whole new space to do something, I feel like is part of the biggest reason that I have resistance around change. It just feels so overwhelming. But a long time ago, something that I found from a White Stripes song, nonetheless, is that if you can break your problems down into small little pieces and do those pieces one at a time, which in the song they use a squirrel collecting nuts for the winter, and a woman who is struggling with life at the moment, and she sees a squirrel collecting nuts, and she says, if that squirrel can prepare for this daunting thing of winter, then I can break my problems down into little pieces and take care of them one at a time. And that's what she did. That really changed the way that I looked at problems after I discovered that, and this just reinforced that, where you can do large things and you can create new habits just by reframing them and relooking at them, changing the perspective on them. Instead of looking at it as a daunting task, reframe it into something you're just adding to your day that you're already doing. So I really like that video. I then looked at Zach's guide to hermeneutics. It's going to take me like 27 times before I get that word right. Hermeneutics, which I greatly enjoyed because I realized that I kind of add a little bit extra to my hermeneutics every day, to my interpretation. Because anytime I interpret something, I try to view other perspectives on that interpretation. So if I interpret a piece of news, for example, I'll discuss it with multiple people, and because I'll have my interpretation of that piece of news, and I'll discuss it with multiple people and get their interpretation of that piece of news, so I can combine it with my interpretation and kind of make a rounded picture. It's like our experiment with Owen, where no one could get the full perspective of Owen at any time. We needed the community perspective to be able to bring that together. Just like I like to get the community perspective on basically any input I have in my life, so that I can see the different perspectives and get the whole picture. Because I realized very early on that our individual perspective is not the whole picture. It's just one point of interpretation of one thing, which really can lead us down a path of assumption and assuming that something is a certain way based on our one interpretation of it. Where if we get multiple interpretations, multiple perspectives on that one thing, then we can build a more clear community perspective of that in our society. and how that relates to everybody and how we all coexist with it and how we interpret it. And you can get more insight and have a more rounded understanding of that thing. Even though, like in hermeneutics guide, you were explaining that we'll never know the naked truths. We'll never know the true facts, which really hit me because I like having like intellectual debates and debating people about things, and I really use like resources heavily to do that. I'll research all these things for my factual points, and then I'll present my factual points because I like to have a basis of not my own perspective, not just my own perspective. I like to give my own perspective on things, but I also like to give other perspectives with my own perspective so that I can kind of pitch, so I can kind of give a little more sight of Owen to everyone, using him as an example, from just my perspective. Instead of it just being a single perspective, I give a couple multiple perspectives and then I kind of chew over and then I get their perspective. I'm already adding that to all the perspectives I had just by doing the research about that thing that I wanted to speak about or that I heard a conversation and jumped in about and started speaking on. So I really enjoyed the guide to hermeneutics. I really can't say that word at all. I really enjoyed the guide to hermeneutics because it really showed me how there really is no fact. And how it's all just interpretation. And we can never truly peel away the layers of interpretation. Which made me just think of when you kept mentioning that we are all... that we are all transcendent beings and that even we cannot know ourselves. That was really like, that is like a perfect echoing of that meaning, that like everything is just an interpretation. Hermeneutics is just a theory of interpreting. Studying the theory of how to interpret, of what our interpretations are. And then I jumped into contextualized analyzation, text analyzation, contextual analyzation. And I really enjoyed that as well because I found that contextual analyzation and hermeneutics are basically, it's contextualization. Wow, I can't. My brain is struggling with this one. Is another way of interpreting. We're reading something, and then the contextual analyzation is how we're breaking down our interpretation into multiple steps and multiple ways of getting the information out so that you can interpret it in your way from our interpretation. It's very interesting. They go very hand in hand. I'm actually looking forward to doing some contextual analyzation, and bringing my newfound knowledge of hermeneutics to that, and my multiple perspectives of a thing that I try to have, to present that. So that's going to be very interesting for me. I also read through the syllabus again, where we're going to basically take our first 3 weeks. We're going to do preliminary stuff. On our fourth week, we're going to jump into Plato's Republic, which I am super pumped about. I'm going to read through the entire rest of the books because it like, this seems so fascinating to me. I can't wait to dive into it and really have those conversations because like those debates and those conversations and those discussions are some of my favorite things about being a human. And we're gonna dive in. We're gonna break it all down. We're gonna go through each week. We're gonna be reading, rereading. We're gonna be doing contextual analyzations of things. We're gonna be watching videos about what is justice, what is philosophy in week 4. And we're going to continue to expand and dive deeper and deeper and deeper into this beautiful text, Plato's Republic, and really explore what it is and how it connects to us and society itself. Until that 13th week, and then we just prep for the final. Or sorry, the 12th week where we watch a movie, and then we prep for the final, Equilibrium, which I'm really pumped for because I think Equilibrium is a really, really good example of how blaming one single thing for all of the faults, like they blamed emotion for the cause of all war, strife, pain, all this stuff, and so they outlawed it, got rid of it, and you can see how it affects the people and how it affects the culture and how it completely changes the society, because you can't look at paintings, you can't look at books, you can't look at anything that evokes emotion. It's one of the most interesting movies that I've watched, and I'll watch it over and over and over again, and it brings up these huge social questions for me of like how emotion affects us, and it kind of emulates our current society, because in our current society there's so many emotions that are looked at with stigmatism and looked at like men aren't supposed to cry and aren't supposed to like reveal their emotions, women are always crying, are always emotional, and there's all these very interesting dynamical concepts of what's appropriate emotion, what isn't appropriate emotion. And in my life, I've found that all emotion is appropriate, and expressing that is how you are a healthy human being. And a lot can come up from not expressing your emotional self, because it's just energy. We're all energy. Our emotions are energy. And they just manifest in our bodies in different ways depending on whether we take care of them or leave them to find some place in us to set up shop until they've been taken care of, and the things that manifest from that. So I'm really pumped to watch that movie again for the like 10th time. And then I did some pre-Googling, some Googling on Plato's Republic, and some of the first things I come up with are the usual, the Wikipedias, the classic archive, the Plato's Republic, which I thought was pretty cool. They have all 10 books, is it? Yes, all 10 books, plus the introduction, and they are the A664K version, translated by Jeremy Jolette. So I might use that as a resource to be able to finish the books. Also, if you scroll down to the bottom where Google like presents you books for suggestions, there's ridiculous quantities of them. Books about Plato, books about ethics, books about political philosophy. So I can see how Plato's Republic has really influenced, just from this Google search, really influenced our culture, our society, in ethics, in political philosophy, in law, in many other things. On all of these, 15 or more books to view. There's loads and loads and loads of books on Plato and Plato's Republic, and books based off of Plato's Republic in political philosophy and in so many other areas. And it's very interesting to see how this 10 books, this one idea, or these multiple ideas, excuse me, have really fundamentally influenced our culture in such a big way that you can just Google it and you can tell that this is prominent in this society. It's a prominent thing. So that was my summary of what we watched and read. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day.